He locked the storage room door behind us, leaned his back against it, and whispered, "I'm on break, and I don't care who finds out." I didn't move, because the way he looked at me, mouth slightly open, breath heavy, eyes dark with something he'd clearly been holding back, told me this wasn't just some mistake. It was a decision. It started like nothing. I was at the mall, walking with no destination, one of those midweek afternoons when you just want to escape your own brain, so you put your phone on silent, zone out under fluorescent lights, and pretend browsing is therapy. I just passed the food court when I saw the wet floor sign, and two things happened at once. First, I nearly slipped, because of course I wasn't looking. Second, I heard someone behind me laugh, low, throaty, unbothered. "Careful," he said, dragging a mop across the tile with one hand, the other gripping the yellow handle of a bucket. That was the first time I saw him. The janitor, except he didn't look how you expect. He wasn't old, slouched, or invisible. He was built, tall, solid, with thick forearms and stubble on his jaw, wearing a tight black tee under his navy blue uniform that fit too well to be a coincidence. His dark curls were hidden beneath a backwards cap, and a tattoo snuck out just above his glove on his wrist. He grinned at me like I'd just made his day by almost falling flat on mine. "You okay?" he asked, not mocking, just amused. I laughed and rubbed the back of my neck. "Yeah, your floor attacked me." He chuckled again. "Blame the soap. I like it slippery." That sentence landed like a hammer wrapped in velvet. We both paused. I glanced up at him, and for a split second we both knew. Not imagined, not accidental. Known. Then he turned back to his bucket like it was nothing. "You sure you're good?" I nodded and I started to walk away, but I felt it, his eyes on me, so I turned back. "You always mop like that?" I asked, bold for no reason. He stopped, smirked. "Only when someone interesting walks by." My pulse kicked hard. "What's your name?" I asked. He straightened up. "Rico." Just that, no last name, no hesitation. "You?" "Matt?" He nodded once, then tilted his head toward a door labeled janitorial/storage. "Want to see where the real magic happens?" I blinked. "Sorry?" I said, half laughing, heart pounding. He didn't laugh. He just looked at me with that same heat in his eyes and said, "You've been walking in circles for 15 minutes. You're not shopping." He wasn't wrong. "I don't bite," he added, "unless you ask." I looked at the hallway, then back at him. No one was around. No cameras, no noise. Just the low hum of mall air conditioning and the steady beat of something dangerous under my skin. I nodded once and followed him to the door. He opened it slowly, pulled me in, closed it behind us, and locked it. The door clicked shut behind him, and just like that, the mall was gone. The hum of chatter, the smells of popcorn and perfume, the mindless footsteps of shoppers, all vanished behind thick metal and a lock that made my pulse skip the second it clicked. Rico stepped past me without saying a word. The storage room was small, barely the size of a walk-in closet, packed with supplies, shelves of paper towels, bottles of blue solution, heavy mop handles stacked in the corner. It should have felt sterile, cramped, unsexy. But with him there, it felt different. The lighting was dim and golden, like it belonged in a photo instead of a workplace, and he stood in it like he was part of the furniture, casual, confident, built like someone who used his body all day and knew exactly what it was capable of. "You ever been in here before?" he asked, leaning one shoulder against the metal cabinet. I shook my head. "Doesn't really scream VIP access." He smirked. "It does if you know what you're looking for." He stepped closer, slow, not pushing it, just closing space, like he already knew how far he'd go and was waiting for me to catch up. My back brushed against the wall behind me, and for a second I couldn't think. Not with him this close, not with the way his arm brushed mine, rough glove against bare wrist, or the way I could hear his breath, steady but ready. He didn't touch me. Not yet. Instead, he looked into my eyes and asked, "You sure?" 2 words. Not flirty, not teasing. Real. I nodded slowly. "Yeah, I'm sure." And then he moved. His hands were on my waist first, strong and warm through the thin fabric of my shirt, thumbs brushing just under the hem like he was testing where the tension started. He leaned in, lips barely grazing my jaw, not kissing, hovering, his breath hot enough to make my skin tighten. "You smell like mint," he murmured, voice deep and almost amused. "But I think I like that." Then he kissed me. Soft at first, just a press, a question, and when I kissed back, harder, his hand slid up my spine like it had been waiting there. I grabbed the edge of his shirt and pulled, the fabric lifting in my hands, revealing skin that was warm and smooth and marked by muscle that didn't feel like it came from a gym, but from work. His lips moved to my neck, jaw, collarbone, slow, steady, learning me like he didn't want to miss a single inch. And just when it felt like we'd crossed the point of no return, he stopped, pulled back, breathed. I blinked. "What's wrong?" He didn't speak right away. Then, eyes still fixed on me, he said, "I've never done this, like this, with someone I just met, but I don't want this to feel cheap." That hit me like a brick wrapped in kindness, because I didn't expect that. Not here, not now. But neither did he. I reached for his hand, laced our fingers, grounded us in something that wasn't just touch. "I don't want cheap," I said softly. "I just didn't expect to feel this much already." His thumb brushed across mine, and that one slow circle felt more intimate than anything else so far. He leaned his forehead against mine, then whispered, "Okay, then let's do this slow." And as his lips met mine again, less urgent this time, more connected, I felt it. This wasn't just about the moment. It was the start of something we weren't ready for, but couldn't stop now. His lips were still on mine when it happened. Not even a full second after he whispered, "Let's do this slow." There was a sharp, deliberate knock on the storage room door. Not a soft tap, not accidental. 3 fast, firm knocks. Rico froze. His body stiffened, lips still brushing mine, hands halfway under my shirt. And for a second, neither of us moved. We were holding our breath like kids caught sneaking out, but this didn't feel like mischief anymore. It felt exposed. Another knock. Then a voice. "You in there, Rico?" It was male, low, casual, maybe early 30s. Not shouting, but not trying to be discreet either. Rico pulled back slightly, eyes darting toward the door. I whispered, "Do you have a shift supervisor?" He shook his head. "Number that's Jesse, security." I raised my eyebrows. He exhaled. "We, used to hook up." Ah, and just like that, everything in the room shifted. The steam, the tension, the way he had just called me something more than casual, all of it twisted in the air like it was being rewritten in real time. "Do I need to go?" I asked, pulse still racing. "No," he said quickly, firmly. "Not unless you want to." Another knock. "Yo, man," breaks over. "We've got someone puking in the cinema hallway." Rico groaned under his breath, then turned to me and said, "Stay here. Please. Don't leave." I nodded. He pulled his shirt back down, ran a hand through his hair, and unlocked the door, opening it just enough to slip outside. I heard Jesse's voice again, clearer now. "Didn't think you were on this floor." "Helping with a supply restock," Rico lied. "Right." A pause, then, "Saw someone with you earlier. You good?" Rico didn't answer right away. That silence did something to me. Not because I needed him to tell the world I was in there, but because it reminded me how fast real things can vanish when someone's scared. Eventually Jesse said, "Look, it's not my business. But I know how you are when you feel too much too fast." Another silence, then fading footsteps. Rico returned a few seconds later, closing the door behind him with less force this time. His eyes met mine. "I should have said something," he said quietly. "You didn't have to," I replied. But that pause, it said enough. He stepped forward. "This isn't nothing to me. You should know that." "I want to believe that," I said. "But this kind of thing can mess people up if it's not real." He stared at me, eyes heavy. Then he said, "What do I have to do to prove it?" And I said the first thing that came to mind. "Don't ask me to be a secret." He didn't move, but his fingers reached for mine again. And for the first time since we stepped into the room, I wasn't just turned on, I was invested. Because now it wasn't about what happened in the storage room. It was about what happened after. Rico didn't say much after that. He just stood close to me in the storage room, fingers still laced with mine like he wasn't ready to let go. His silence wasn't cold. It was thinking silence, the kind that usually means someone's about to say something they've never said before. And after a moment, he nodded once, sharp and quiet. "Come with me," he said. "Where?" He pulled the door open, scanned the hallway, then reached back and took my hand. In public, no hesitation, and walked me straight out of the storage room, down the side hallway, right back into the mall. The lights felt harsher now, brighter, the crowd louder. Rico didn't care. He didn't drop my hand, not even when we passed a pair of teens who looked up at us and smirked. Not when we passed another janitor who glanced at him, then at me, then back at the floor. Not even when we reached the edge of the food court and Jesse, the security guy from before, turned from his station and made eye contact. For a split second, everything went still. Jesse looked at Rico's hand holding mine, then at my face, then back to Rico. And to his credit, Rico didn't blink. He just gave a simple nod. Jesse looked away, no comment, no drama, just acknowledgement. Rico kept walking, leading me to a quieter bench outside a closed-down retail spot with papered-over windows and a forgotten Christmas sale sign still taped up behind it. We sat down finally, and he let out a slow breath. "I'm not used to this," he said, eyes on the floor. "I've had flings, hookups, you know, doors that lock, nothing that keeps going when the door opens again." I nodded. "Me either." He turned to me then, slower this time. "But I think I want to change that." There was something in the way he said it. Not dramatic, not romantic, but real. Like someone finally letting themselves admit they want more. I leaned into him a little, shoulder against his. "So," I said, "is this your way of saying we should try something?" "I think we already are," he said. And I smiled, wide and stupid, like someone who didn't expect to feel wanted today. But just as I opened my mouth to say something back, I heard it. "Matt!" I turned. My stomach dropped. It was my ex? Brandon. Of course it was. Of all the days, all the malls, all the corners in all the cities, he had to be here. He looked at me, then at Rico, then down at our still connected hands, and he smirked. "Well, this is new." Rico stiffened beside me. I swallowed hard. "Brandon, I didn't know you worked out here." "I don't," he said, "just picking something up. Clearly I'm not the only one." The energy turned cold fast. Rico looked at me, eyes questioning, jaw tight. And Brandon didn't wait for a reply. He just walked off, slow and smug. I turned back to Rico. "He used to love pulling that smug crap," I said, laughing awkwardly. Rico nodded but didn't smile. Instead, he stood up. "I should get back to work," he said, voice flat. My heart dropped. "Wait." He didn't meet my eyes. "Just need to think for a bit." And he walked off, this time without taking my hand. I stayed on that worn-out bench longer than I should have, surrounded by the sound of footsteps and voices that blurred into white noise, my fingers nervously rubbing against the seam of my jeans, while my eyes stared blankly at the floor, replaying every second of what had just happened like a movie reel I didn't ask to see. Brandon's words still echoed in the back of my mind, smug, casual, cruel, in that subtle way he always mastered. And even though Rico hadn't said much before walking away, the way his shoulders tensed and his eyes darkened had said more than any sentence could have in that moment. For a while, I honestly thought that was it. I thought maybe whatever fragile thread had been tying us together had snapped, quiet and invisible, leaving nothing but that strange aftertaste that always lingers when something electric ends before it really begins. But just as I stood to leave, heart heavy and steps slow, I heard a voice from behind me, low and unmistakable, the kind of voice that carried even when it tried to stay soft. "Matt?" I turned, and there he was again. Rico standing just a few feet away, his posture still composed, but his eyes softer now, like something inside him had finally settled into clarity after spinning too fast for too long. He walked back to the bench without waiting for permission, sat down next to me with that same steady presence I had felt in the storage room. And for a moment, neither of us said anything, letting the noise of the mall swirl around us like a shell we could both hide inside. Then, without looking at me directly, he pulled something from the back pocket of his uniform pants, a small folded piece of paper that looked like it had been carried around for too long, and placed it in my hand like it weighed more than it should have. "I needed to get out of my own head," he said quietly, the kind of quiet that makes people lean in. So I wrote some things down because sometimes seeing it in ink makes it harder to run away from. I unfolded the paper slowly, the crease splitting open like a line down the middle of a secret, and read what he had scribbled in rough, hurried handwriting. A list, just 5 lines long, but each one more honest than anything he'd said to me aloud. "This feels different." He looked back when I walked away. He didn't flinch when I touched him. He stayed. He let me stay. I stared at the words, letting each one settle like a stone, dropping into still water, rippling deeper and deeper as they sank into me. When I finally looked up, he was watching me, not nervously but openly, like he was tired of guarding things and ready to let them fall where they may. "I thought about ghosting," he admitted, voice steadier now. "I thought about letting you walk out of here and pretending none of this mattered, because I've done that before. Taken something real and convinced myself it was safer not to feel it than to risk losing it." I didn't know what to say because part of me was still stunned by the fact that he came back at all, that he chose not to disappear behind work or fear or whatever old ghosts used to guide his decisions. "So," I said finally, my voice softer than I expected, "why didn't you ghost me?" He reached over, his fingers brushing mine, slow, intentional, and gave the faintest smile. "Because I couldn't stop thinking about what it would feel like to regret not trying," he said. "And I think I'd rather be scared with you than alone and pretending I'm not." The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was full of something steady and warm and surprisingly gentle, like the beginning of a storm that doesn't bring destruction, only rain that soaks the ground until something new can grow. Then he leaned in a little closer, just enough to drop his voice lower. "I want you to come back tonight," he said, not as a dare, not as a tease, but as an invitation wrapped in something real. Not to the storage room, to my place, my space. No secrets, no locked doors, no pretend. I swallowed, chest tightening in a way that felt nothing like fear and everything like hope, then nodded slowly, letting the paper fold back into my palm like a promise I wasn't ready to let go of. He stood first, and this time, when he walked away, he glanced over his shoulder, not to check if I was following, but to let me know he hoped I would. And somehow, that glance said more than all 5 lines on that list combined. The outside of his apartment building didn't say much. Old brick, narrow stairwells, windows covered in plain blinds. The kind of place you'd walk past 100 times without ever wondering who lived inside. But the second I stepped through his door, everything shifted. It was warm, not just in temperature, but in feeling. Soft lamps, not overhead lights. Music playing low from a Bluetooth speaker tucked near a bookshelf, stacked with old paperbacks and worn movie cases. And a faint scent of citrus and clean linen that made it feel less like a bachelor pad and more like a space someone lives in rather than just sleeps in. Rico had taken off his uniform shirt, now wearing only a loose gray tank top and joggers that hung low on his hips, revealing a trail of dark hair and a body that was carved more from labor than from vanity. He moved around his kitchen with a quiet familiarity, opening the fridge, pulling out 2 cold beers without asking, handing me one as he motioned for me to sit on the couch. I did, trying not to stare at the soft curve of his shoulder or the way his fingers flexed around the bottle as he sat down beside me. Not too close, but close enough that I could feel the heat of his thigh through the denim of my jeans. We didn't speak at first. He just sipped, exhaled, and stared at the opposite wall like he was organizing thoughts in his head, lining them up in some order that would make sense once he said them out loud. "I've only had 2 people in this apartment since I moved in," he said finally, his voice calm but deliberate. "My cousin when I first got the keys, and my hookup from a year ago who left before sunrise." I turned to look at him, heart suddenly beating a little faster, not from nerves, but from understanding just how rarely he let someone into this part of his life. "Why me?" I asked, my voice soft but honest. He turned too, eyes meeting mine in the dim light. "Because you didn't just want the door," he said. "You wanted to know what was on the other side." He set the bottle down and leaned forward, his elbows on his knees, hands clasped like he was bracing for something. "You ever spend years pretending you didn't care?" he asked, more to the room than to me. "Like, if you kept everything light, surface level, physical, then no one could really touch anything under that." I nodded. "Yeah, I used to think that was strength." He smiled, just barely. "Same, until I started watching you that day in the mall, wandering like you were looking for something, even if you didn't know what." I blinked. "I was," I admitted. He turned, reached for my hand again, not just to hold it, but to anchor it between both of his, like it was something he didn't want to drop. Then he kissed it, slow, careful, software. That single gesture said more than anything that had happened in the storage room. And when he leaned in to kiss me again, this time on the mouth, it wasn't rushed or steamy or desperate. It was homecoming. His lips parted slowly, moving with mine like we were already used to the rhythm, his thumb stroking my cheek as his hand found the back of my neck and pulled me closer with a tenderness that surprised even him. We lay back on his couch, bodies pressed chest to chest, legs tangled, mouths learning each other between deep breaths and soft moans that came not from lust, but from relief, like 2 people who had been craving something real for longer than they ever admitted, and finally found it in someone who stayed. And just when the moment felt too good, too still, too right, he pulled back slightly, his forehead against mine, eyes searching. "I have to tell you something," he whispered. I froze. "What is it?" He took a breath. "I'm not just scared because of my past," he said. "I'm scared because I think I already like you more than I'm supposed to." I didn't answer right away. Instead, I touched his face, smiled against his lips, and whispered, "Then stop thinking about what you're supposed to feel, and just let it happen." The morning light filtered through sheer curtains, pale and gold, casting soft lines across the edge of Rico's bed where our bodies still lay, half covered in warm blankets and the weight of the night we just shared. Our breaths slow and matched, the air between us comfortable in that rare, quiet way that only happens when nothing is being hidden anymore. His arm was draped over my waist, his chest pressed against my back, and for the first time in a long time I wasn't counting hours or wondering when it would shift or when the warmth would disappear like it always did. I was just there, inside the stillness, inside something I didn't have to chase or question. We hadn't said much after falling asleep. There weren't speeches or promises, no labels or declarations, just his hand in mine and the soft thud of his heartbeat against my spine, and the sense that we had somehow arrived at something neither of us could name, but neither of us wanted to let go of either. So when the knock came, sudden, hard, and way too early, I felt Rico's entire body stiffen before he even opened his eyes. 3 knocks, then a voice, low, irritated, familiar. "Rico, it's Jesse." I felt his breath hitch behind me, and I knew instantly that whatever peace we had created in this apartment was about to be tested by something he hadn't finished with yet. He didn't move right away, didn't even answer, just let his hand slide off my waist and rest on the mattress, fingers twitching slightly like he was deciding whether to get up at all. "He can't come in," I said softly, not angry, just aware. Rico sat up slowly, ran a hand through his hair, and sighed. "No, but if I don't answer, he'll keep coming back." I sat up too, pulling the sheet around me, watching him from the side as he stood and grabbed a hoodie from the chair, tossing it on without looking at me. "You want me to leave?" I asked. He paused. That pause said everything I didn't want to hear. But then, without turning around, he said, "No, just stay quiet for a second." He stepped into the hallway, and I stayed on the bed, heart pounding louder with every second that passed, hearing muffled voices through the door. Jesse asking questions, Rico answering too calmly, too fast, the way someone does when they're trying to make things sound more casual than they are. Then I heard my name, not clearly, but I knew it, and my stomach turned. I got up, pulled on my clothes in silence, and walked to the edge of the hallway where I could hear without being seen. "Look, man, I'm not here to mess with your thing," Jesse was saying, "but you can't act like this doesn't affect other people." "It's not about other people," Rico replied, and his voice was sharper now, low but hard, like it had been honed by every time he tried to avoid this exact conversation. "Yeah? Then why'd you keep it quiet?" A pause. Then Rico said, "Because I didn't know what it was yet, and now I do." Another silence. Jesse let out a slow exhale. "I just hope he knows what he's getting into." "He does," Rico said, "more than anyone else ever has." The door shut not long after. Rico didn't come back right away. I returned to the bedroom, sat at the edge of the bed, my fingers picking at the hem of my shirt, and waited. When he did return, he looked different. Not shaken, not angry, just tired. But in the kind of way people look when they've finally done something they should have done a long time ago. "I should have said something sooner," he said, stepping closer, not asking for forgiveness, just telling the truth. "I let too many people assume they knew who I was, what I could feel, Jesse included." I looked at him. "Do you want to disappear again?" I asked, calm but clear. "No," he said, walking to me slowly. "Not this time." He knelt in front of me, hands on my thighs, eyes locked on mine with more honesty than I'd seen in any look before. "Just don't walk away because I took too long to show up." I reached down, touched the side of his face, and said what I hadn't let myself say until now. "You're already here. That's what matters." And for the first time he smiled. Not that crooked smirk or guarded grin, but something real, something relieved. We stayed like that in the quiet with no one knocking, no secrets waiting in the hallway, no closed doors between us anymore. The next time I saw Rico at the mall, he wasn't pushing a mop bucket or walking past me without eye contact. He was leaning against the same storage room door. Only this time when I walked by, he didn't look around first. He just pulled me in by the hand. And when Jesse passed us 5 minutes later, standing too close by the vending machines, Rico didn't let go. He just smiled at me, the kind that said, "Yeah, this is real now." We didn't need to explain anything. We just walked out together. Like the story was never supposed to stay behind a locked door, like it was always meant to be seen. If you're still here, it means you didn't just listen. You felt it, all of it. Drop a comment that says, "I stayed behind that door," so we know exactly who made it to the end and felt every second of it. Until the next story, keep the lights low, the silence honest, and never forget what started in a room no one else saw.